Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, the Sanhedrin daf Yud Tes. We're going to begin on Yud Chesamid base, 3 lines from the bottom. Choylitz v'choyltzin v'chulu. So this goes back to our Mishnah in the second parak, which we just started yesterday, that talks about a Kohen Gadol. So we said a Kohen Gadol is done v'danin. He could also be involved in eidos. However, it says choylitz v'choltzin l'ishto, that he could do chalitza chalitza could be done to his wife, and he could also perform chalitza if his brother dies. Umiyaben ishtoi, and he could also do someone could do yibum. His brother could do yibum. Avalhu enu miyaben meishu aser ba'almana. A kohen hedjit can marry an almana. So therefore, in the event that the Kohen Gadol dies, his brother can do yibum. However, if the Kohen Gadol's brother dies, then he cannot do yibum because he's not allowed to marry an almana. So that's what it means. Now, kapasik vatani loshnam and eris and loshnam nesuin. It doesn't make any distinction whether he died by nesuin, they were fully married and they had B and everything, or it was just erison. Now, Bishlam and Nesuin, I understand why the Kohen Gadol cannot marry and cannot perform Yibum if his brother died and his brother actually had a full-fledged marriage first. Havi aseh v'lo aseh, because you have an aseh and a lo aseh. As Rashi points out, we have it says besula yikach. The Kohen Gadol has to marry a basula, which is mashma v'lo ba'ula, dahainu aseh. Almana liyikach hari lav. So there's an aseh and a los aseh against the Kohen Gadol marrying an almana. So even though it's true, there is a mitzvah aseh of yibum. However, as we continue Tesam and Aleph, vein aseh doiches los aseh v'aseh. And therefore, even though there is a mitzvah aseh of yavam yavo, it can't override violation of an aseh alois aseh. Element of erison amai. What's the problem with erison? Yavoi aseh, v'yidches lois aseh. Let an aseh be doiches alois aseh. Now, it is true she's an almana, but the other aseh of besula yikach, she's still a besula. So there's only it should be that the aseh should be doiches alois aseh. And this is discussed at great length in Masechtas Yavamas, the beginning of the Masechta, for many blot. So the answers, Gazer b'yarishayna oto b'yashniya. Tanemi hachi im kidmu ubalu b'yarishayna kanu. If he taka does yibum with her, he's married to her. It's a good yibum. Vasal kaiman b'yashniya, but he can't keep her because of the b'yashniya. So, interestingly enough, even though it's true that technically, says Rashi Mirishayna, the Yibum, Mekayma Mitzvah Saseh. The very first act of having Bia with her is a Mitzvah Saseh. Bia Shnil la Mitzvah Yibumhu. There's no mitzvah anymore of having Bia, so therefore, but there's still a Lois Saseh, because she was Takan Almana. So even though it's true that an Aseh is Doich Lois Saseh, but that doesn't help, because that means he can only have Bia with her once, and that doesn't work, obviously. Okay, so that was question 12. Kohen Gadol choyleitz avalhu enu miyabim. He misiru miyabim midaraisa midrabanan. No. So novum in the nesuin isur midaraisa. Then I say doiches los asay. Novum in the erisin isur midrabanan. The midaraisa says doiches asay. Okay. Right. So So let's just go through this part of the Mishnah. So what happens in a situation where someone dies? So we say that we don't want him to escort the casket in Yoitzah Charmita, but rather we have him go significantly behind so that we have this extra precaution to make sure that he doesn't become Tameh. But at least Rameir allows him to accompany the mace. Rabbi Yehuda is extremely strict and says, "Any yaitz min hamikdash, mishim shnemer min hamikdash lo yaitze." He says, no, he's not allowed to accompany a mace at all, even from far back, because he's not allowed to leave the mikdash. So on this, the Gemara says as follows: Tanraban, Just means you shouldn't go with them, together with them. But you can go behind them, way behind them. Basically, as Rashi said in the Mishnah, that you can't be like in the same mavoi. As they leave one mavoi, so as they leave, then you could now be in that mavoi to keep your distance. B'yaitse ad Pesach chul. So Shaper come Rabbi Yehuda. L'chayra, Rabbi Yehuda is saying good. Amlach Rameiri hachi lebeisa namiloi. So I don't understand. If you want to actually learn the pasuk literally, that says min hamikdash lo yaitse, don't ever leave the base of mikdash. That means you can never go home. We know that's not true. We find in the beginning with Masechtas Yoma, it says that 7 days before Yom Kippur, he leaves his home to go to the Beis HaMikdash, and there's a special room, the Lishkas Sanhedrin, but that's only for Yom Kippur. It's not a yearly thing. It's only for 1 week of the year that he has to stay in the Beis HaMikdash. But if you want to be literal in the reading of the pasuk, it sounds like he can never leave the Beis HaMikdash, which of course can't be. El Hakkemer. That he should never leave his heightened sanctity. But since he's far back from everyone else, we're not concerned he's going to end up touching the mace. Rabbi Yehuda agav mare dilma makabi ostav naga. No, the fact is that he's distraught because of his relationship with the deceased, and therefore, once we start allowing him to come somewhat in proximity to the mace, we're scared that he may become tameh. And when we are involved in nichum avelim, so in this, the Mishnah said, when he wishes to console others, so all the people go one after the other. Which is like the Kohen Meshuach, will say he's the one who is the replacement Kohen Gadol when the Kohen Gadol can't perform. So he's like between them. And Kashumas Nachem, when the Kohen Gadol himself needs to be appeased and consoled because he's an Avelis, we say that we should be your kapara. And he says that you should be blessed from the heavens. That's the give and take. So in this, the Gemara says like this: Tanrabanan, Kashu oiver b'shura, when they're in a row, l'nachem es acherim, to console people who are in Avelis, Sagan, who is the deputy Kohen Gadol, Mashuach. It's interesting. It sounds like they're different people. Sha'avar, but this is Mashuach Sha'avar. This is the Kohen Gadol who was the Kohen, and then he was replaced, maybe because he was Tameh or something like that, or he's just an emeritus. B'yaminoi, he's on the right of the Kohen Gadol. V'rosh beis of v'avelim v'chol am b'smoilo. The rosh beis of, the mourners, and everyone else is on the left. Geshu oimid b'shura, and when the Kohen Gadol himself is an avel, u'misnachim me'acherim, he's being consoled. Sigan b'yaminoi. Here the Sagan is on his right. Rosh beis av v'chol am b'smoiloi. Avol Mashuach she'avar, the Kohen Gadol who is the replacement Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Mashuach she'avar, lo asigabei. He is not going to come during this time. My timer chol shadaite savar ko chadibi. The Kohen Gadol doesn't want to see him because he's going to say, this man is just rejoicing at my loss. As a Kohen Mashuach she'avar, who takes over the position of the regular Kohen Gadol when necessary, is rejoicing in his tragedy. So interesting, we actually don't want him around. Amra Papa Shemamina Mahamas Nisa Tlos. We see three things. Shemamina, Hainu Sagan, Hainu Mamuna. Now when we say the word Sagan, that's actually the same thing as the Mamuna. Not that, as I said before, the Sagan and the Mashuach She'avar are two different people. The Sagan is the deputy Kohen Gadol, and the Mashuach She'avar is a different Kohen Gadol. However, the Sagan and the Mu'una, those words are interchangeable. Shemamina Avelim Oimdin, an Avel stands, the whole Oivrim, and everyone passes by. Shemamina Avel Musmoil, the mourners are on the left side, Hamanachmin Hain Oimdin, and the of the Menachem who are standing. Tanaban. Originally, the Avelim would stand. They basically stand still, and everyone would pass by. They used to fight with one another, these families. One said, let me pass in front of the Avel first. Which is talking the minig nowadays. When we leave the basic kvaris, we produce two lines, and the Avel walks in between the people. But it used to be that the Avel would stand still and people would walk by him, which is interesting that even though this is not really a halacha, but the tradition is that before the hesped, some people will go and meet the person in Avelos. So the Avel in that case is standing still or sitting usually, and people come and speak to the Avel, which is it ends up being like people are waiting in line. So it's interesting, before the hesped, it's done how it used to be done, but that doesn't cause fights because it's like a first come, first served basis. However, after the burial, if it would be that some would go before the others, like why? We're all here right now at the same time, and therefore it could cause fighting. And therefore it's better that we should be in two different rows, and the other goes between us. Chaz v'holach v'seiv v'siman. Amar Rabbi Hichser Rabbi Yosi as Hadavar Liyushno B'tzi Payri, that he actually returned the tradition back to the way it originally was. Shahayu Avelim Oimdim, that the Avel would stand still, v'chol Oivrim, and people would pass by. The Yomer Rabba Hiskin Rabbi Yosi B'tzi Payri, he instituted Shulot Tehei Isha Mahalachas B'Shuk Ubana Achareha Mishum Masa Shahaya. You shouldn't allow a woman to go in the marketplace with her children behind her because of a Masa Shahaya story. What's the Masa Shahaya? So Rashi says, Shiganvuhu Partsiim Miachareha, that the Partsiim used to kidnap the children of V'nosnuhu Bebeso, and they would put them into their house. Uchshechazra, and then when she saw V'urasa Hischil Soekas Ubayche, she thought her kids were walking behind her, but they were actually grabbed. Ba echad mehen v'omer bov v'arenu, come and I will show you where your child is. Lech v'nichnos acharav, come after me. So the woman is going to be so distraught, v'inu oisa, and then they would violate her physically. So because of that, violent physical sexual act against her, that was a whole trick to be able to get her in a very vulnerable state. So we don't want the children to be behind her, but rather she should keep an eye on her children continuously. That women can speak with one another in the bathroom. Mishum yichud. Says Rashi, Shema Yelch Adam Sham, that maybe a man will come. V'imlo yishmu koil Adam yichnas v'yachid Sham. And if you don't hear other people there, basically, there could be an issue that the man could be secluded with women. It says Rashi, so the problem is that people used to go into the bathroom. It's very, very interesting. To 2025, there's a whole debate about biological men going into women's bathrooms. So this is an interesting, not necessarily exactly the same, but there could be issues there as well. Rabbi Menashe bar Avish, Shalos says Rabbi Yeshaya Rabba Bebeis Alman the Hutzel. So he presented a point to him in a Beis Alaman, which is a cemetery in Hutzel. Yarmali Ein Shur Pchusim Yasar B'nei Adam. He says that a shura cannot be less than 10 people. When it comes to Nicham Avelim, the rows that are created, there has to be at least 10. In Avelim in a minion, and they're not counted. The Avel is not part of the 10. Bein Shavelim Oimdin, the Cholam Oivrim, Bein Shavelim Oivrim, the Cholam Oimdin. This line is not mentioned at the beginning of Masechtas Ksubas, which discusses this element of creating a shura for Avelim, because it contrasts it to Birchas Chasanim. Over there, it's a whole sugya of Sheva Brachos and whether the Chasan has been a minion. So there he is min a minion, but an Avel is not min a minion in this case. Kshimas nachem hu, so iboilhu. Ki menachem hu achrini hechi. When the Kohen Gadol goes to an Avel, hechi yamahu, what does he say? We know what happens when he's an Avel, that we heard in the Mishnah. But what happens if he himself goes to an Avel? Tashma. Vahu oimer tisnachamu. He should say, you should be consoled. Hechinam ilemeki menachmi achrini lididei armulhu ihi tisnachamu. So naksha karamilahu. It's what exactly is this talking about? Says Rashi, naksha karami simanhu meitolahem lahara. Is he giving them some bad words? That they need consolement. Like, understand, if it's that if we're talking about that there's no one that's being consoled, that nothing happened to them, why is he saying you should be consoled? Right? It's almost like he's saying that something bad should happen to you, that you'll need consolement. El kimanachem lachrini ormulhu tisnachmu shemamina. So it's obvious talking about a case where the Kohen Gadol goes to the Avel, who Taka does need consolement, and that is the proper language that you should just say tisnachamu. So obviously, again, it can't be talking about where people are going to him, the Kohen Gadol is an Avelos, so those people who are coming to him are not an Avelos. So obviously, there's nothing that they need to be consoled about. Therefore, it must be the other way around. Melech l'dan chul. Okay. So in contrast to the beginning of our Mishnah of a Kohen Gadol, when it comes to a king, we do not say the dinim are the same. Rather, a king cannot judge or be judged. He's not involved in any giving testimony or being testified against. So there's no din chalitza, there's no yibum. He doesn't marry, let's say, his brother who died. He can't do yibum or chalitza. He doesn't do yibum or chalitza to her, to his wife. And if the king dies, you're not allowed to marry his wife either, because she was married to a king. So on this, we find it says Rabbi Yehuda Omer Imratz Lachleitz Yavim Zachol Toiv. He taka could do it if he really wanted to. Okay. Now let's just see the rest of the Mishnah. Armula ein shaymin lo ve'ein noisin almanoso. He's not allowed to marry an almano. Rabbi Yehuda Omer noise hamelch manasa shel melech shechem etzim David shenasa manasa shel Shaul. So maybe when it comes to a David who was like a king could marry the wife of another king. Okay. So let's see the Gemara. So Amar Rav Yosef, Lo Shanu, the only time we say this din, El Malchi Yisrael. We're talking about a Jewish king. El Malchi Beis David, Don. B'Don Noiso. However, when it comes to Malchus Beis David, he could judge and be judged. Dechsiv Beis David Kaimar Hashem, Din Lavakir Mishpat, Ve'i Loi Dayinin Le, Inhu Heichi Dayin V'Aksiv, we said, first improve yourself, then improve others. In other words, if you can't accept the responsibility of being judged, then how could you judge others? So it must be that they both work. So when it comes to Malchus Beis David, we allow him to judge others, and he's also allowed to be judged, because Malchus Beis David is on hopefully a different tier, that they're not allowing their malchus to get in the way of the MS. El Malchi Yisrael my time lo mishum masa shahaya. However, outside of Malchus Beis David, it's not allowed. Why? Because of the following story: the Avdei Yani Malka Katal Nafsha. Because King Yanai, he killed someone. The servant of the king, the servant of the king killed someone. So the Avdei Yani Melech, the servant of Yanai HaMelech, Katal Nafsha, killed someone. So Shimon ben Shetach said, Tenu einechem boi v'nadunu. Let's go investigate this matter and let's judge this man for murder. So Sholchule, they sent, quote, Avdecha katal nafsha. Your servant, this is a sent message to Yanai HaMelech, your servant killed someone. Shadrulhu. So basically, he should be sentenced and he should be judged. So Sholchule ta'ant nami lahacha. He said, you also come to din. You, the king, should also come, not just the eved of your, not just your servant, but you, Yanei Melech, too. But who would be Baalav, Aimer Tyra, Yavu Baal Hashor, Miyamad al Shairai? Because when an ox, which is like the ownership, the property of the owner has to be present if the ox kills. So too, you, Yanai, it's comparable to you owning this, having this Eved, and therefore you need to be present as well. Also, so Yanai Melech Taka came, but Yosef, Armalei Shimon Meshetach, Yanai HaMelech Oimid Al Raglecha, Yana, you can't be just sitting around, stand up. V'idubach, and testify. You're standing in front of Hashem. This is not me. This is Hashem's house. They're supposed to stand up because Hashem is in the presence of Dayanim. Yanai HaMelech wasn't too impressed. Not like you said, El Kama Shi Omer Chavracha, but rather as your friend said, as we continue to Yud Tes Amud Beis. Nifne liyaminai, so he looked toward to his right, and Kivsulafnenu Vikarka says says Rashi, Nifne Shimon looked toward his right, Leda im Yomer Kamoiso, to see if they said like him, Kivshu Panehem, Shahayu Yereim Imenu, so they all covered their face because they were scared basically of Yanai. So Nifne was smaller, so he turned to his left to see the people that would hopefully support him. Shimon Meshetach did, and Vikavshu Paneim Bakarka, they hid, so he basically was alone. Shimon Meshetach, Bali Machshavos Atem, you Chachamim must be in deep thought. Yavo Bal Machshavos V'Yifra Mikem, so let you Bali Machshavos come and investigate and be involved in this process of judgment. Taisus says over here that Lo Haya Melech Sarach Lamoid, typically a king shouldn't have to stand. The Yishleimer, the Dini Nefashos Shani, when it comes to Dini Nefashos, they do have to stand. Kishas Gamar Hadin, Kishas Gamar Din, Amrin, Mevarek Shua, Divya Kol, Dayanam Yeshiva, Vali Dinim Ba'amida. We actually see this in American court. Please rise for your verdict. So there are certainly times that he has to stand, but Dini Nefashos, we certainly require someone to stand. So therefore, that's what Yanai Melech was supposed to do. Yavo B'Machshos V'Yifra Mikem. Miyad Ba Gavriel, so Gavriel, the angel, came, who often comes in times of need. V'Chavta Mekarka, and he hit the ground. Umesu. Ba'Oisa Shah Amru Melech L'Dan V'Lodanin. They cannot have a judge. Can't be a judge. Oisav L'Omeid L'Omeidon Oiso. Basically, the problem was that Yanai HaMelech was not receptive to accept the basic notions, right? And basically, the Rashi explains it a little bit differently. Bali Machshavos, Rashi says, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem should come and V'Yifra Mikem and basically punish them for everything. And then Gabriel came, and these people died. So again, according to the Shita of the Chachamim, a king doesn't do Yibum, doesn't do Chalitza. However, Rabbi Yehuda, interestingly enough, disagrees. As we already said, Rabbi Yehuda says, Naisa HaMelech HaManaseh Shel Melech, that he is allowed to marry. First of all, he says, Im Ratza Lachle Tzil Yabim Zachlo Taif. He could do it. So on this, Eini V'Yam Ravashi Afilu Mad Yam Manaseh Shemachal Kavadam Maichel, this is going Kedushin and elsewhere, that even someone who says that, because it talks about Kibbut Avim over there, so when it comes to being Maichel your Kavod, that is allowed when it comes to a Nasi. But a Melech Shemachal Kavadam Ein Kavadam Maichel Shnemer Samtas Lecha Melech should be also Lecha. He has to have this element of fear. A king is not to be Maichel on his kavod. So how can Rabbi Yehuda say that he's allowed to do it? My answer is mitzvah shiny. So a mitzvah is different. So what exactly is that answer? The idea is that because he is doing a mitzvah, we're not going to say that that takes away from the kavod hamelech, and therefore he's allowed to, if he wishes, as Rabbi Yehuda said, it's not considered to be a disgraceful thing for a melech to marry. Let me. So where's that again? Rabbi Yehuda im ratzal lachos hayam zachal toiv. Zachal toiv. He's allowed to. Okay, and it's not like a bezoyin or anything. The ein noisin chulu. So in the Gemara, it's not so clear, but let's say it's mashma that, let's say, maybe he had other brothers as well that could have done chalitz or yibum. It's a shtickle difficult to understand. What does that mean if there's a chiyuv to marry al yibum? There's a zika, and he's only the only yavam. So how exactly does that work? Okay, vein noisin chul. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda. Noshim haruyas lo mebeis hamelech. So, umaynihu meirav Michal. So we said that David was allowed to marry from Shaul. It's referring actually to the daughters of Shaul, not Shaul's wives, but Shaul's daughters, Meirav and Michal, because David actually married two sisters. So Shaul Talmidav es Rav Yosi. They asked Rav Yosi, and we'll focus on Rav Yosi in a second. How is it possible that David was allowed to marry two sisters? I understand that Yaakov Avinu did it, but that was before Matan Torah. But how is this allowed? You are allowed to marry two sisters, provided that the first sister that you were married to died. You can't marry a second sister if, let's say, you divorce sister number one. You can't marry sister number two. But if she died, then it's 100% halachically allowed. And that's what happened. Meirav died, and then he married Michal. The truth is, he was not that he was married to Meirav and she died. He was never married to Meirav, even though we thought maybe he was. It was a mekach tais. It was a mistake. Kedushi tais, I should say. Shnemer. It says in the pasuk in Sefer Shmuel, "Tenoas ishti, give my wife as Michal." It says my wife Michal, Asher Arisani Li, that I engaged her b'meya arelim for 100 foreskins of the Plishtim. So that's a pretty interesting wedding present, but that's what he gave her. So my Talmud, what does this learn? We learn from this. Papa Michal ishti, vo Meirav ishti. The fact that it says, "Give to me ishti as Michal," which is mashma, the only wife that he actually had from Shaul's daughters, was Dafka Michal, because he was never really married to Meirav. So my Kedushi Tois, what was the mistake? What was the Kedushi Tois? Anyone who kills Goliath, I'm going to give them all this great stuff, a lot of wealth, etc. Also, Katli, we know, of course, David killed Shaul. David killed Goliath. So Shaul said, Milva Islach Gabe, I owe you money, right? So it's considered now that David is the Malveh and Shaul is the Loiva. He borrowed money from him. He owes him money. And I can't give, and this money is won't be a good kedushin. Okay? So we know that you can't be Makadosh a woman with a loan, right? So basically what that means, it means you can't forgive a loan and say, okay, instead of me giving you Kedushi Kesef, I'm just going to forgive a loan, because a milvel hoitzandis, as the Gemara Kedushin says, and therefore because of that it's nothing. You didn't give her anything. Azul, he went Yav LaAdriel. So Shaul gave Meirav to this man. Adriel married Meirav, because David wasn't married to Meirav. Teses Meirav, Bashol David, Armele Ebois Deasalach Michal. If you want to take Michal, Zil Isle Meirellas Plishtim, then you, David, can marry her with 100 foreskins. Ozo Isle, so he went and gave it to her. Armele Milva Prut Islach Gabe. So these foreskins is now like a pruta, and again it's a milva. It's still the case of a milva because he owed him money. So Shoel Savar Milva Pruta Daita Milva. Shoel felt that really he wasn't married to Michal because when there's a loan and you give a little pruta, the das is on the loan that was canceled. The David, which means it's not a kedushin, if the whole thought is on the milva, because of Makadosh milva and Mekaneshes. The David Savar Milva Pruta Daita Pruta, and therefore it's a good kedushin to Michal, and not to Mirav. So again, he was never married to Mirav because it was a milva, and then when he married Michal, it was milva pruta and daita is a pruta. Milva pruta daita pruta, and therefore David certainly should be married to Michal. Shol savar lo chazu v'lo midi. But the truth is, David and Shaul disagreed on the value of the foreskins. Shaul said, "What's the value of foreskins? It's worthless." Therefore, he didn't give her anything. So you have to at least give her a pruta. But David savar chazul kalvi v'shunri. You can feed these foreskins to dogs and cats, and therefore, because it does have some monetary value, it's worth at least a pruta. And therefore, he is married to Michal. Rav Yosihi. And this is Rav Yosihi. Rav Yosi, again, this is the whole question of Rav Yosi was asked, why is it that David married two sisters? Rav Yosi, Haitana es ishti es Michal my darishbe, because according to him, Michal was his wife only, right? And not Michal was his wife and not Merav. But according to what Rav Yosi says, he says that Merav and Michal were his wives, just that Merav died and then he married Michal afterwards. But how does he do this pasuk? The pasuk is mashma Ishti is his wife is only Michal. That's what the pasuk says. Rav Yosi Tameh, the son of Rav Yosi Hoya Darish Mikrais Urvin. He actually will darshim psukim which are mixed up, if you will. Okay. What does that mean? So Ksiv, the pasuk says Vayikach HaMelech Shnei Bnei Rispa. He took Shnei Bnei Rispa, the two daughters of Rispa Bas Aya, Asher Yolda L'Shol, who were born to Shol. Es Admoini Ves Mepiboishes. These are the names of the people. Ves Chameshes Bnei Michal, the 5 children of Michal, Asher Yolda L'Adriel. So Adriel Nasna, was Michal given to Adriel? We just mentioned above that this man Adriel, because Meirav's kedushin was a kedushi tois, so he actually gave Meirav to Adriel. So how could you say in this pasuk that Michal was given to Adriel? Well, and not only that, Palti ben Laish Nosna. She was actually given over to Palti ben Laish. We know that Meirav was actually given over to Palti ben Laish, which was questionable because she was really married to David. El Makish Kedushi Meirav la Adriel. Kedushi Michal la Palti. Ma Kedushi Michal la Palti. Just like Michal being married to Palti ben Laish, Bavera, was a sin, because we know Michal was really married to David, and Michal therefore was Ashes Ish, which is, we're going to see the godless of Palti ben Laish, that he never touched her, even though the king said, yeah, you're married, but Palti ben Laish didn't, because he knew that in truth that Michal was really married to David. Av Kedushi Meirav Adriel Bavera. So too when it came to the marriage of Meirav to Adriel was also Bavera. What does that mean? Because according to Rav Yosi, she was really married to David as well, right? These were Meirav's. Fine. He was really married. So therefore, he was really married to both. That's what he's saying. David was really married to Meirav, and Meirav was not married to Adriel, and David was really married to Michal, and Palti ben Laish was not married to her. Rabbi Yeshua Karchanami Haksiv es Chameshes b'nei Michal bas Shol. What does he do with this pasuk? Amar Rabbi Yeshua v'chi Michal Yalda. Understand? Was Michal the one who gave birth to these 5 sons? Well, Meirav Yalda. Meirav gave birth to them. Meirav Yalda Michal Gidla. However, Meirav died. So who took care of this woman who died, her 5 young children? Her sister, Michal, did. Therefore, because of that, Michal is given the credit for having cared for her deceased sister's children. Which of course we also see by the story of Esther with Mordechai and Esther, that he was also megadol a yasaima b'toich beisai. So over here, if you take an yasam, if you adopt a child, it's ki'il like it's your child, because in essence, even though it's biologically not your child, but you're raising that child and you're doing everything as a parent would to any other child, and therefore, even though it's true they were Meirav's children, but because Michal raised them, Michal gets credit for having raised them. Okay, let's look at question 13. So one answer is he didn't, because Meirav was a Kedushi Tois, or according to Rabbi Yossi, Michal did marry David, and Meirav did marry David, but Meirav was married first, she died, and then he married Michal afterwards. Okay, question TA 28. Ha'im donan as a melech. So we saw this on Yud Testament Aleph. Are we done as a melech? So Malchi Yisrael in donan mishum ma'isa diyanai. Malchi means David donan. When it comes to Malchus, right? As we said, melech is loy donin. So on this was Rabbi Yosef lo shana el Malchi Yisrael, avo Malchi beis David done. Okay, and again because of the Maisa of Yanai HaMelech, 28, that he was obviously not willing to accept the basic dinim of court, that even as a king he's mechuyev to stand up, and it caused a lot of problems as we saw. Okay, TB 29. Heich nasa David shtei achayos meirav Michal. So that we just saw, which is the same question as question 13. TB 29. Either he was married to Meirav first and then Michal afterwards because Meirav died, or it's coming to tell us that Meirav's Kedushin was Kedushi Tois. All right, let's keep on going. Chananya, Kra, Yonasan. Let's just see a little bit more. That he called out to the neighbors there, saying, Yoiled ben Naami, that there was a child born to Naami. It wasn't Naami that gave birth, it was Rus. El Rus Yalda, but Naami Gidla. Rus gave birth, but Naami raised the child. Lafikach Nikra al Shema, and therefore, for that reason, it was named in Naami's credit. Okay. Rav Yochanan Ramahachav Ishto HaYehudis, the Jewish woman, Yolda es Yorad Avigdor, which is another term for Moshe. So V'ishta HaYehudis, Rashi says, Bekel ben Yefuna Mishtoi Kra. This is referring to Koli ben Yefuna, Yehudis al Shem Shekafra ba'avodah zara, because she denied avodah zara, when it's gaira and converted. Shekol kafra ba'avodah zara nikri Yehudi. Anyone who denies avodah zara is considered to be a Yehudi. Yorad Avigdor, Kuan Shemaisin Shel Moishahen. This is one of Moshe's names. Avigdor is one of Moshe's names. Elu b'nei Basia bas Paro asher lokach lo Marad zu Kolev. Vam nikru shmo Mered. So why is Kolev also called Mered? Shamar b'eitzas maraglim, because he rebelled against the the advice of the spies. V'chi Basi Yalda, was it really Basi that gave birth? Well, Yocheved Yalda, it was Yocheved that gave birth to Moshe. Yocheved Yalda, Ubasi Gilo Fichan Tikral Shema. Even though it's true, the Basia, the Bas Paro, is the one who didn't give birth to him, but because she took care of him, so therefore she gets the credit for having raised him like it was her child. Rabbi Lezer Omer Mahachar, what's him here? Galus Bizroya Amcha should be redeemed from the arm of your nation. But Yaakov Yosef Sela. Yosef Yola. I don't understand. Was it true that Yosef gave birth? Well, Yaakov Yola. It was actually Yaakov. Ela Yaakov Yola the Yosef Kilkil. Yaakov gave birth to them. However, Yosef supported them in Mitzrayim. So Yosef is given the credit because he took care of them in Mitzrayim, and he gave them food during the time of the famine as everyone came there, like he raised them, because without him they would have died. He needed him. Anyone who teaches his friends' children Torah, it's like you actually gave birth to them. Shnemar ve'el toidos Aaron u'Moshe. These are Aaron and Moshe's kids. It doesn't mention Moshe's kids; it only mentions Aaron's. So why does it also say it's Moshe's kids? So this is a famous Gemara, which is quoted in Rashi over there in the beginning, in third parak in Sefer in Parshas Bamidbar. So how do we understand this? Right? The El Shemayis b'nei Aaron. So Loimilcha Aaron Yolad Moshe Limad, that Moshe taught them. Therefore, he was given credit for that. L'chein Koyamar Hashem El Beis Yaakov Asher Padas Avraham, that he was redeemed by Avraham. V'chi Heichen Matzinu Yaakov Shepadul Avraham. What does that mean? So that he was redeemed. So Amar Yehuda Shepadu Mitzar Gidol, that Avraham was having to raise Shepadu Mitzar Gidol Banim, from Avraham having to raise 12 kids. Says Rashi, Shehutul Alav Tarech HaShvatim, that Yaakov took upon himself the difficulty of raising the Shvatim, Shal Avraham Hayim Mutul Eisel Tarech, that maybe it was really on him to do so, as the pasuk says, Your Beisi is Zaracha V'hu Padai. So it really was Avraham was supposed to have the 12 kids, but Yaakov did. V'hainu Dechsev, Lo Ata, not now, Yivoish, are you embarrassed, Yaakov V'goymer? Lo Ata Yavish Yaakov Aviv, he shouldn't be embarrassed from his father. V'lo Ata Panav, Yichfor Avi Aviv, his face should not turn white from his grandfather. Ksib Palti, V'ksib Paltiel. So what's his right name? So Omer Rav Yochanan Palti Shmo, that's actually his name. V'lo Shmo Paltiel, Shapaltu Kael, that he basically caused to spit himself min havera, that Hashem caused him and saved him from sin. So that's what it's referring to, that he was saved from sin. Ma'asa. So what did Paltiel do? So Nasa Cher ben Leveina, he placed a sword between him and Michal, because again Paltiel knew that he wasn't really married to her, but really Michal was married to David. Amr Kol Ha'isa b'davar zeh yidakir b'cherev. Anyone who is involved in Eishes Ish, he should be killed by the sword. But it says that he went with his wife. Shenasla ki isha. It was as though it was his wife. It wasn't really his wife. Or say that he went and cried. So al hamitzvah de ozulmine, that referring this mitzvah because he no longer had this great nisayon, that he was together with this woman, even though he was able to pass over it. Right? It was with difficulty he separated for her. That's what Rashi says. But kushi kanatziv, and the reason is because then the nisayon was taken away. Ad b'chorim shenasu shnehem ki b'chorim. They were considered like a bachor shel tam bia, because he never had bia with her. Amar Rav Yochanan takva shel Yosef v'naso shel Boaz, that when it came to Yosef, by not having relations with Potiphar, Eshes Potiphar, that's nothing compared to Boaz, which was much greater. However, what Boaz did is nothing compared to what Palti ben Laish did. So Yosef, in the middle of the night, V'yalft, Zomai v'yaleft. So Omarav Shenasa Basaru Kirashi Liftois. That his basar, his aver, was considered, Rashi says, niskasha, was extremely hard. And it says Rashi V'avapikin Kavash Yitzro. He withheld his Yetzer Hara. V'yafal Pi Shepanu Yehoisa. And Rus was not married. The imo b'mita, she was in the same bed with him. Of a Yosef Ashes Ish Haisa, then imo b'mita, they were sleeping in the same bed. And in addition to that, she was a married woman. So it's much easier to say to yourself, I'm not touching this woman. She's a married woman, and she's not even in my same bed. So Boaz's level is much higher. As we continue to have Chaf, Taikvishal Boaz and Shal Palti bin Layish, and Palti bin Layish was greater. Kid Amran, like we said before. Because, again, even though not only the king himself, Shaul said, yes, you are married. So therefore, you would think that he would have every right in the world to be able to be with her, and he would have nothing to have to worry about, and therefore that's the greatness of Palti ben Layish. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's look at Rabbi Gibber's test. So it says as follows. Because an asay cannot be doichel asay v'asay erison. Gezerah bi rishayna, gezerah bi ashniya. Mahin a gimel takana is shehiskam of Yosef b'tzipoiri. That is hard. So one is by the ovel to walk and the others to stand still. That the girls should talk in the bathroom, and for a child to walk in front of the mother because of Masa Shahaya. Beautiful. Eich nasa David hamelach beis achoyos. So it's a machlokas. One said he only married the second one after the first girl died. I don't mention the names. One says one marriage was actually a kedushi tois. Okay. Ma haisa machlokas ben David l'shol le'inyan b'kedushi shel michal. One is milva pruta daita, either a pruta or a milva, or was the foreskins David gave worthless? Shol, yes, David could give it to dogs and cats. Ma haisa gedulasa shel Dorshel Rabbi Huda Rabbi Eloi Adkam.